All right, we're live. So we're picking off up from last week's meeting in Coach's Corner, where we talked about many things, but ended the session talking a little bit about youth athletics without going too deep into the weeds on that. So let's pick up where we left off and talk about youth sports, youth athletics. Jazzy and Luis are both youth coaches themselves. I've only coached little kids, like 4 and 5 year olds with soccer when I was in high school. So that was a while ago. So I'll be really leaning on their stories and learnings too. But hopefully we can all learn something here. So I'll turn over the floor to both of you. Maybe you just want to explain your experience with coaching youth athletes, what sport you've done, what age group, how long you've been doing it, that kind of stuff.
I guess I'll start. So I've been coaching high school sports for about 3 years now, and this being a really unique year, I was hoping to continue in some capacity. However, in the state of California, football has been moved to the spring, so we'll see what happens come springtime. But I spent 1 year on the JV coaching staff of my local high school and 2 years on the varsity coaching staff. I've also worked with a number of autistic kids here in the community, just helping them stay active and stuff like that. But my main experience lies with coaching football at the high school level.
So I have been coaching since last January. So January 2019 was my first experience with youth coaching, and I currently am the assistant coach for the 14 and under Tremors softball team. So it's travel softball here in Marin, and I also have been doing I did 12 and under last summer, and then I do a lot of clinics for different cities around here. So the clinics that I do, like in Mill Valley and Kentfield, some of the girls are like 4, 5, 6 years old, and then I've dealt with a lot of 8 to 10 year olds, and then this is my third season, including because we do summer and fall is technically 2 different seasons. This is my third 14 and under season, so this is my third season with the high school kids.
Awesome. And I will really leave it to you both to drive the conversation, ask each other questions and things like that. On the non-youth athletic side, I have done summer camps for youth, so it's not technically athletics. It's just about helping kids be more physically active and making it fun and helping them stay interested during the summer and learning how to integrate exercise into their lives. I did that when I was a personal trainer at San Mateo Athletic Club, another Exo site. So maybe some of that will be relevant to the discussion. But I guess I'll start with a really big, broad question is what are some of the trends you're seeing with youth sports, or, if you can't think of a trend, what's different now than when you were a youth athlete yourself?
Go ahead, Justin.
I know the main thing that I've noticed now versus when I was a kid is the emphasis on proper movement and proper techniques for certain mechanics when it comes to softball, at least. So growing up, my coaches were always parents of girls on the team, my dad included. My dad coached all of my youth teams, and there was not as much experience in playing the sport, and there was no one person that had been hired to coach us in certain mechanics, or someone that was an expert in the sport I was playing that could help us learn a little bit better. And from what I've noticed now is that at least every at least one coach at every level for the organization that I coach with. There's someone on the staff that knows like strength and conditioning, or knows the techniques, or can, teach proper throwing mechanics, or teach the girls how to use their legs when they're hitting, and just things like that. Like, we never had someone like that on any of the coaching staff. Like, it wasn't until college where we started to see, more like niche of having a certain coach for certain things, right? Like, normally it's just one coach and a couple other parents that all kind of just throw things out there and come up with like practice plans and whatnot, versus, now it's like, okay, like this person, like I specifically was hired as a coach because of my background with training and being a personal trainer and working in a gym, but also because of my softball experience. So I'm seeing more of like the marriage of the two versus just like having a lot of parents be coaches.
The biggest change I want to say that I've seen from my days playing youth football and up through the high school level to the kids now that are playing at the high school level is probably a large increase in resources. And when I say resources, I mean more coaches. Like Jazzy said, there's a lot more niche coaching in there. I'm kind of one of those coaches that was brought in specifically for my background and helping people move better, and also just to kind of facilitate and be more of a resource to a large group of kids. I think when I was playing, there would be 3 to 5 coaches, and now the coaching staff is, half the size of the team. We got 15 to 20 coaches. So another big difference that I noticed too is resources when it comes to safety. Kids, all athletes getting concussion baseline testing, seeing an athletic trainer daily, having an athletic trainer at the school at all times. When I was playing, we were lucky to have an athletic trainer on game day. We didn't have access to any trainers during the week, or regularly throughout the season. If you were injured, it was kind of, like hopefully it gets better soon, kind of do your own thing, do what feels good. And I'm really glad that the kids nowadays are getting a lot more help and a lot more attention when it comes to their injuries and things like that.
That's really exciting. Yeah, I that was my experience as a high school athlete. Was all of a sudden these athletic trainers, I have no idea who they were, would appear on game day, and you would
Hmm.
never see them during the week at practice or anything like that, or any kind of strength and conditioning coaches. I think that was reserved for the football team, certainly not track, surprisingly, or women's soccer. So maybe some of the other sports had that. But yeah, at my high school, maybe the football team had strength and conditioning, and that was about it.
Yeah, that's how it was. Like, for like, I don't even think we had an athletic trainer. Like, it was just a PE teacher that would go get ice for you. Like, at least for
Hmm.
softball, like that's how it was. And like, we didn't have anyone looking after us. And even like, I'm sure they did like for the football team, and I know there was like a training room for like people to get evaluated, but like it wasn't like it was open and available to all athletes. It was like probably just the football team, to be honest, or maybe the baseball team. And I know like my brother is 7 years younger than me, so like his experience playing football in high school was a lot different from like the kids our age, that would have played in high school. And like, he went to his trainer after every game, like went to athletic trainer, like after or on Saturdays in the morning, he would go and take ice baths and stuff. And I'm like, we didn't even have ice baths to my knowledge in high school. So it's, things like that where I think they're starting to take it more seriously, and offering, these services that I didn't see until college. Because like, I mean, I lived in the training room in college. I'm hurt all the time, so like I basically like I use that resource more than the wellness center in college. And I think that high schools and younger programs are starting to use that a little bit more. And I think with certain sports too, like football players are going to get a little bit different experience, because like you're not necessarily like, once you get to high school, like you're not playing year round like you are maybe as a kid. Having Pop Warner is going to be a little bit different. And like for softball, like nothing is school sanctioned until you're in high school and beyond. So I think with those like traveling programs, or like I'm sure like with AAU with like basketball and like traveling soccer and all the things like that. I think they're probably starting to use more coaching staff that can help in case of an injury because they don't have those extra resources available like schools do.
Mhm. And in regards to specialization, do you both, it's talked about quite a bit that youth athletes are being forced to specialize way too early in search of scholarships. And in some sports, of course, that's necessary to start really young. But it's certainly the exception, not the rule. And so there's kind of a pushback in many circles for kids to generalize and explore. What have you two seen? Have you two seen kids being forced into early specialization, or are people more well-rounded? Is it a mix of both? What are you seeing?
So with my personal experience, mainly coaching kids at the high school level with football, a lot of them actually would be playing multiple sports. The ones that I know that went to the next level to the NCAA, a lot of them either played basketball or baseball. And sure that they were definitely told, I think, to focus on football and have that be their main priority. Now, most of the kids that came up playing, youth football from like 6 years old, a lot of them, don't go to the next level in the NCAA, but a lot of them kind of choose to specialize. I know a lot of kids that probably could play another sport, but maybe they just only wanted to play football. And a lot of them just ended up playing football and kind of made that their thing over the years. And that's just kind of how it plays out. So kind of a mix, but surprisingly with the kids that go on to the next level, most of them pick up another sport in high school.
Yeah, that's probably not surprising from what we're hearing, and just thinking of some of the pro athletes that are, that have backgrounds in other sports. So yeah, I guess that's not too surprising. It's interesting to hear you talk about the kids who who self-select to specialize. It doesn't sound like it's coming from the parents. It sounds like it's coming from them, which I would argue is, if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. At least it's coming from themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think like from my like what I've seen, at least like with my girls, is a lot of them do have other either sports or other activities, whether it's they're into the performing arts or they're dancing or they're playing volleyball. There are actually a lot of volleyball players on my team as well. And I think they're still like young enough to the point where like they can do more activities, but also at the same time, like I do coach like a like B level team. So like it's not like it's competitive, but it's not to the point where you're doing showcases every weekend and they're not trying to get recruited to go play softball in college. So there's kind of that difference in like the level of play that I'm coaching. And I know like from my personal experience, I like it's like I can see both sides of the spectrum, right? Like, yes, you should be able to go and play other sports and you need to go and have fun and not make it work at a very young age, because that's where you start to get burnout, right? Like, if you tell a 10-year-old that they can only play soccer, then they're not going to want to play soccer anymore, right? Like, it's just kind of what's going to happen if you're putting pressure on the kids to choose really early. And like my dad always said, like, if you play other sports, like it helps you stay in shape for the sport that you like, right? So like I always would play basketball in the off season and it would help with like my softball, and it would come springtime. But eventually like I phased out of basketball because one of an injury, like I broke my collarbone during right before my like freshman season. So I didn't play then. And then I played my sophomore year and I was like, yeah, I'm done of high school. And like I knew that I wanted to play softball in college. And there's also a point where if you do want to play sports at the next level, you have to decide early, because colleges fill up their rosters like 5 years in advance. So there won't be like scholarship opportunities after a certain point in time. So like I knew like by my freshman sophomore year, I basically would have had to like sign on with a team if I wanted to play like D1 in college. So there also comes to be a point where you have to decide early if you're going to commit to that part. but you don't have to like specialize in that sport, but you at least have to know like, hey, like if this is what my end goal is, then I'm going to have to commit and try and do this by this year so that way I can play on this team that I want to.
Mm-hmm.
I know like there's a little bit of that aspect that comes into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that makes sense, right? If you are chasing a scholarship. But once again, that sounds very athlete driven, which is encouraging rather than parents being, like you said, Jazzy, setting, being like, you can only play this one sport and that's all you got because we want you to get a scholarship. So, yeah, it's encouraging that it's what both of you are seeing is the athlete is making that choice. So let's talk a little bit about nutrition because I've had this conversation with Noelle, who's our spin instructor. She has four young boys, 4 boys under 13, I believe, and they do lots of different sports. But Marin County is known for healthy eating, eating organic, and at least on the surface. But Noelle's experience, and she's a high level triathlete, triathlon coach as well as our spin instructor. She has been absolutely appalled by the snacks that their boys are getting at every practice and every game, and it's cakes and cookies for every single birthday on the team. It's Gatorade all the time. It's more, when I was growing up, we got fruit at halftime and water and maybe a snack after, but it was a healthy snack. And that seems to, in her experience, that's gone completely out the window because they're kids and they can have kid food while the parents are eating their salads with free range chicken and the stuff I love to eat, but they're eating the gourmet stuff themselves and just letting the kids have whatever. And as we know, nutrition is one of the 4 pillars, and it's just as important to youth athletes as it is for adults. So what are you two seeing? What are your opinions? I'll leave it kind of open.
Well, first I'll share my experience and the experience that I see with the kids at the high school level today. I was lucky that the program I went to Samarine High School, and they implemented a thing that every night, before every game, parents would come together and do kind of a big cookout and make the whole team dinner. So make sure that we were all eating a really good meal the night before the game and make sure we were all at a certain level of hydration. And they still do that to this day. I think that helps out a lot. I think at the high school level, you see a little bit less of the like the kids getting snacks. I think during the day it's really tough because some kids are on top of it and some kids are really not. The program that I'm with has a health coach who is also a teacher, so I know he's kind of on kids on campus, and so they're pretty regulated like that. But as far as youth, like little kids, I feel like there is still a lot of that, a lot of cake, a lot of like Capri Suns, and I feel like back in the day that wasn't, when we were all kids, that was not as frowned upon as it is now. Now that people know better and still kind of do that stuff, so yeah, that's some interesting stuff.
From my experience, when dealing with kids, it's a lot of them, like, it's not like as they grow up, they get the habits that their parents have. And I know, like, personally, like, my memory is so like spotty. Like, I don't remember what we used to eat after softball. Like, I do remember going to the snack bar and like getting nachos. So like I know I didn't eat great. And like if you're at like a ballpark, like I know baseball, like Little League, like they don't have great food there either. So like normally you finish your game, it's late, you have to go like grab something quick. So you get like a burger from the snack bar or something, right? And so like I feel like at an early age like that, like you kind of learn like whatever your parents do for you. So I feel like later on, like people, like kids are still going to be doing that. So like I see kind of both spectrums on my team right now. It's either, they wake up and they don't eat breakfast and they get like a frappuccino from Starbucks and then come to practice, or they On the other spectrum, they eat just like I do, right? Like some of the girls love celery because I always have my celery sticks, but half of them make fun of me for having my celery sticks. You know, it's like things like that where I feel like half the team is very like focused and they're like, okay, like I need to eat this and like I like these foods. And then the other half, it's, you know, the snack, candy, cakes type of food. And I feel like a lot of it is learned from the parents because if I look around and a lot of the parents will bring like fruit for their kids during, you know, when we're at tournaments or in between games, or they'll get, you know, make sure they're drinking water. But then some, you know, some parents bring the Gatorade, another snacky sort of food. So I feel like it's kind of half and half. And that's where I feel my responsibility is to like lead by example and, you know, show them what it's like to have a balanced meal and, you know, what to eat between games. Like I try, you know, and teach them that way. And also I'm always reminding them to make sure that they're, you know, hydrating before they come. You know, if you're thirsty on the day that you're playing, it's too late in teaching things like that for them to hopefully learn and adapt and be able to carry that on with them.
And that
Yeah.
was my next question was, is nutrition and sport and fueling, let's say fueling, what you eat, defined as what you eat immediately before, during, and immediately after sport, exercise, training, whatever, however you want to think about it. Is that a conversation that you two talk to your athletes about? Luis, it sounds like you have someone on your team who's that's their job, but is that was never a conversation my coaches had with me in any sports I played since I was 4 years old. So is that something that's part of the conversation now?
At the high school level, I think yes and no. Yes, for the most part, you know, coaches are telling kids, "Hey, you know, you have to eat right, you have to do this, or you know, you won't perform well." Straight up. So yeah, we do have a coach in place that helps out with nutrition and all that good stuff. But I want to emphasize what Jazzy said. You know, kids are such a so they're such a reflection of their own environment. Like you have you know parents and friends and an environment that supports you know healthy eating and good habits and stuff like that. You'll often see that in the athlete versus you know the latter. You'll see it the same way. So
Yeah, I definitely have made it a priority for me to talk to the kids about that because I know the importance of it and I learned very late what fueling properly will do for you in your sport. And like I didn't really start eating well or training until college. And I was like, wow, if I would have done this like 5 years ago, like I could be, you know, so much better now. So I try and instill that in the girls that I coach, and I make a point to like make it a priority and make sure that they understand, you know, that they need to be fueling for their performance. And you know, it's just something that I had to learn on my own and that no coach ever taught for me. So I try and be that pillar of knowledge for the girls that I coach because it's, you know, I wish that I would have had that at that age as well as in college from a coach. So
Yeah, I think this is a good point to wrap it up because we're quickly running out of time before our stretch break. So I guess to wrap it up real quick, if you could give one piece of advice to youth athletes or to parents of youth athletes, one or the other, that might be watching this, what would it be?
Um, one thing I would say is just do just a little bit of reading. You don't have to, you know, become an expert on the subject like we are, but just do a little bit of reading. There's a lot of good information out there that will help you improve performance and be safe and be healthy. And it's not super hard to do. You just have to get out there and just read up just a little bit on it, and find what's right for you.
man, just one thing.
Just one
I
thing.
know it's tough.
I mean, I guess what I would have to say is to really be a pillar of support for your kids and, you know, don't push them to do a certain thing or be a certain way, but encourage them and lead by example. So, you know, eating right, exercising, moving, be healthy, all of that. And, you know, just keep in mind that your kids are watching you no matter what you're doing. So just be a good source of support for them.
Awesome. Thanks, you too. I think that's a great place to leave it. And hopefully people will find this useful.